Greetings, everyone! We are excited to share with you the findings of our experiment number 4, which focused on physical and chemical changes. In addition, we will be addressing the questions on our data sheet. Get ready to discover the impressive outcomes of our experiment and enhance your understanding.
To provide a better understanding of our observation, allow me to share the purpose of our experiment. Our objectives are twofold. Firstly, to differentiate between physical and chemical changes, and secondly, to analyze and categorize any changes that we may observe. Before we start with our experiment and observation, we want to give a brief knowledge about the differences between physical and chemical changes. What are the reagents and their difference from reactants?
A physical change refers to a change in a substance's physical properties without altering its chemical composition or identity. During a physical change, the arrangement, shape, size, or state of matter may change, but the fundamental chemical structure of the substance remains the same. Examples of physical changes include melting, freezing, boiling, condensation, sublimation like solid to gas or gas to solid, and changes in physical appearance such as cutting, tearing, or crushing. For instance, if you melt an ice cube, it turns into liquid water, but the water is still H2O molecules, only their arrangement has changed.
A chemical change, also known as a chemical reaction, involves a transformation where the chemical composition of one or more substances is altered, resulting in the formation of new substances with different properties. During a chemical change, there is a rearrangement of atoms and molecules at the molecular level. The starting substances, called reactants, are converted into new substances, called products, through the breaking and forming of chemical bonds. Examples of chemical changes include combustion or burning, rusting of iron, digestion of food, and the reaction between baking soda and vinegar to produce carbon dioxide gas.
Many people may not be familiar with the term reagent, but are more familiar with reactants. To clarify, reagents are substances or compounds that are added to a system to trigger a chemical reaction. Unlike reactants, they are not necessarily consumed by the reaction. Reactants, on the other hand, are starting materials that participate in the chemical reaction and are consumed to create the end products.
In summary, the key difference between physical changes and chemical changes lies in whether the fundamental chemical composition of the substance is altered. Physical changes only affect the physical properties, while the chemical changes involve the creation of new substances with different chemical properties.
For this experiment, we utilized a variety of equipment including a watch glass, glass rod, burner, match, hot plate, test tube holder, evaporating dish, spatula, cubicle tongue, test tube brush, wood splinter, 10 ml graduated cylinder, 4 test tubes, medicine dropper, test tube rack, and triple beam balance.
During experiment 4, physical and chemical changes, our group successfully experimented by utilizing a variety of reagents. These included alcohol, magnesium ribbon, Mosi zinc, dilute HCl or hydrogen chloride, NaCl or sodium chloride, NaOH or sodium hydroxide, and NH4Cl or ammonium chloride.
To move forward with our experiment, we will now outline the necessary steps and record our observations. Our initial step involves adding 10 drops of alcohol to an evaporating dish and then cautiously lighting the alcohol with a matchstick.
To move forward with the second step, We are instructed to carefully drop 3 to 4 droplets of alcohol onto a watch glass. Allow the mixture to settle for a brief period.
To determine the difference between two pieces of food, follow these steps. First, take a wood splinter and break it into two portions. Next, ignite one of the pieces and compare it with the unheated piece. This will give you a clear understanding of the contrast between the two.
The fourth step is to carefully insert a small pieces of mossy zinc into a test tube and then add 5 ml of diluted hydrogen chloride. Observe the resulting reaction.
The fifth step of the procedure involves taking a piece of magnesium ribbon, holding one end with crucible tongs, and igniting the other end in a Bunsen flame.
The sixth step in the procedure is by adding roughly 0.5 gram of table salt to the 5 ml of water placed in a test tube. After this, taste the solution and proceed to heat it until it is dry.
To complete the procedure, add a small amount of ammonium chloride to one test tube containing 5 ml of water and sodium hydroxide to another. Stir each test tube until the solid fully dissolves before comparing them. Finally, fill the test tubes to observe any differences in their results.
Through our experiment, we discovered that when we followed the instructions and placed 10 drops of alcohol into an evaporating dish and ignited it with a lighted matchstick, the alcohol underwent combustion, resulting in a blue flame that emitted both heat and light energy.
After adding 3 to 4 drops of alcohol into a watch glass and letting it sit for a few minutes, we noticed that the alcohol disappeared without leaving any visible residue on the glass.
When a piece of wood is split in two and one portion is set on fire, a chemical reaction called combustion occurs. This causes the ignited piece to emit flames, heat, and light as it reacts with oxygen from the air. Meanwhile, the unheated piece remains unchanged.
When a small piece of mossy zinc is combined with 5 ml of dilute hydrochloric acid in a test tube, a remarkable reaction takes place. The zinc reacts with the acid, releasing hydrogen gas in the form of effervescence. As gas bubbles rapidly form in the solution, the observer can witness the power of this chemical reaction.
Through our observation, we discovered that when we held one end of a magnesium ribbon with crucible tongs and ignited the other end in a Bunsen flame, the magnesium underwent a highly exothermic reaction with the oxygen from the air. This reaction produced a stunning white flame and led to the formation of magnesium oxide.
Our experiment showed that when adding 0.5 grams of table salt to 5 ml of water in a test tube, the salt dissolved, resulting in a salty taste. Upon heating the solution to dryness, the water evaporated, leaving behind salt crystals in the test tube. To effectively complete this lab experiment, we will now answer the guide questions listed in the datasheet.
The first question is, differentiate physical change from chemical change.
When an object changes in size, color, appearance, or state of matter, but its chemical properties remain the same, it undergoes a physical change. However, if there is a chemical reaction between two substances that alters their chemical properties, it is considered a chemical change.
Second question. What is formed when HCl is added to zinc? What change is involved? Explain.
When hydrochloric acid is added to zinc, bubbles were formed. The bubbles represent the hydrogen gas, or H2, that is formed and the chemical compound is called zinc chloride. This represents a chemical reaction, thus a chemical change occurred.
The third question is, what is the residue produced after evaporating the salt solution?
When you evaporate a salt solution, the residue left behind is the solid salt that was dissolved in the solution. The process of evaporating the solvent, usually water, allows the water to escape as vapor, leaving the dissolved salt behind as a solid residue. This process is commonly used to recover salts from solutions, and the type of salt that forms depend on the specific ions present in the solution.
Give the type of energy change in each case.
An exothermic energy change took place upon the addition of salt of the water as the result of the heat being released. This phenomenon occurs due to binding of ions in the salt with the molecules of water. The energy released from the formation of new bonds leads to increases in temperature, which can be observed as the water becomes warmer.
And the last question is, differentiate exothermic and endothermic change.
When it comes to chemical reactions, two types involve heat: exothermic and endothermic reactions. Exothermic reactions are those that release heat, while endothermic reactions are those that absorb heat. These reactions are important to understand because they can have a significant impact on the outcome of chemical processes.
We have finished our lab report on experiment number 4, physical and chemical changes. We appreciate your attention and thank you for watching.